Hey everyone, welcome back to Realpolitik. Today is May the 12th, 2023, and we're going to be talking about the latest developments in Ukraine. So let's get right into it. Okay, so let's look at a few maps because the Ukrainians have launched a counteroffensive in Bakhmut, or it could be the first part of the first phase of their counteroffensive all over Ukraine. So all over the front. Yeah, so with this map, this is the map that came out before the other ones I'm going to show you. All right, so you could see some activity right here to the south of Bakhmut, right underneath Ivanivske, and some activity in the north. Now, if we zoom into the live UA map, you see that what the Ukrainians are trying to do here is create somewhat of a pincer, and they want to push the Russians back to Klishivka. And it looks as if the Russians are going to fall back. The Ukrainians have had some success taking a little bit of territory. I'll show you the newer maps. This is from Wagner itself, themselves. Yeah, so in the north and in the south, they've taken some territory. And Syriac maps, almost the same thing. Uh, so basically, yeah. If we look at, if we go to the north, so far, some sources are claiming that the Ukrainians have actually pushed the Russians all the way back to the settlements of Berkivka and Yahidne. Now, if you recall, a few months ago, right after the Russians took Soledar, right, then they went for Krasna Hora, and that took about a week to fall, a week or so. And then right after it was Yahidne and Yahidne and Berkivka, and after that that was really when Bakhmut was really encircled, right? Now there are some reports that further to the northwest they've also launched kind of a thrust forward northwards, and right here, along the M03, the Ukrainians haven't launched an offensive yet here. They're not fighting along this axis, but there is a very high likelihood that they will, because this would basically be another pincer, and it would cut off the town of Orikovo-Vasilivka, right? And then, using the M03, they could go down southwest and then threaten the north of Bakhmut going down the TO513, right? So that, and then and then these troops here, these forces here could meet up with them, right? And then they could basically threaten the entire north of Bakhmut. And if these forces here in the south are successful, of course, in Klishivka, the Russians, some sources are saying they've already fallen back to the outskirts of Klishivka, but we're going to have to wait and see. But these maps don't show that, but there are rumors swirling around right now. And it's interesting because the Russian MOD is denying everything. They're telling people not to believe the social media, not to believe anything you hear on Telegram. But if you recall, during the Kharkiv counteroffensive, when the Ukrainians took all this territory back in the blue, basically the Russians didn't release any any press release for 3 days, right? Um, but anyways, the Russians are trying to dissuade people from panicking. Obviously, they don't want their own troops to panic, but yeah, the Ukrainians have definitely activated to the south of Bakhmut and in the north. How successful they will be remains to be seen, but if they can push past Klishivka as well as in the north, then they could also go up north the TO513, and then Bakhmut could very well be encircled. right? But it's easier said than done. Anyways, another thing I should mention is that there was a video that was released recently showing fighting, and it was geolocated right here in Bakhmut, right? Right here, and that if you look at the live UA map, that would be right here. We see this little dot, this little square I've drawn. So looking at the map here, I've drawn it all out. Basically, in the blue is the area that the Wagner assault units control. This map isn't always updated like it should be, but anyways, they control the blue. The Russians control the blue. And then based on that square, I drew a line forward, and that basically is approximately based on that with the geolocation where the gray zone should be. So that actually makes sense to me. The gray zone should be around here. Um, and yeah, the Wagner assault units control this area. Of course, if you look at the Rybar map, you'll notice that zooming in, the Russians have given names to all these different areas, right? So, anyways, that's interesting. Something else to mention is that the British, the UK, this is the UK Defense Minister, and they've decided to give Ukraine the Storm Shadow missiles, and these are stealth missiles with a range of 3 kilometers. Let's see what he says.
Today I can confirm that the UK is donating Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. Storm Shadow is a long-range, conventional-only precision strike capability. It complements the long-range systems already gifted, including HIMARS and Harpoon missiles, as well as Ukraine's own Neptune cruise missile and longer-range missions elsewhere gifted. The donation of these weapon systems gives Ukraine the best chance to defend themselves against Russia's continued brutality, especially the deliberate targeting of Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, which is against international law. Ukraine has a right to be able to defend itself against this. The use of Storm Shadow will allow Ukraine to push back Russian forces based within Ukrainian sovereign territory.
So, anyways, you heard that. That's Ben Wallace, the UK Defense Minister. And this is what they're giving Ukraine. It has a range of 300 kilometers, but at the same time, it's air launched. So, as you know, Ukraine doesn't have many fighter jets in inventory, and the ones that they do have, it's not uncommon for them to be shot down more than anything, honestly. They get shot down all the time, according to the Russians. And at the same time, a lot of them are targeted while they're on the ground. So launching them is it's a task in and of itself. Anyways, on to Avdiivka. This is another map by Syriac Maps, and you could see here, this is not the only map saying this, but basically, if we look at Avdiivka, you'll see that the Russians actually, you know what's interesting? The Syriac Maps says that the Russians, and some other maps agree, that the Russians are basically that they don't control this little salient here, that their line of control runs along the river line, right? So, anyways, what everyone's all the analysts are saying now, all the mappers, is that the Russians are basically tightening the noose around Avdiivka. They're basically moving eastwards. They're moving to the north, and from this area here, according to Syriac maps, they control the Russians are right up to the highway. They don't control this little chunk here, but basically it's the same idea. They're pushing westwards, so they're trying to tighten the noose around Avdiivka. And these are the roads, this one right here, and this one, and this little dirt road. These are the roads that remain under Ukrainian control. And I mean, they are pretty much more or less under fire control, right? One way or the other. They are under fire control. I mean, that's like 5 kilometers away. So, anyways, the rail line is mainly how the town city was resupplied. But now the Russians have fire control over the rail line and the roads, so it's a precarious situation for the Ukrainians. And I wonder if the Ukrainians are also going to launch a counteroffensive here as well. Now, here's the thing. Let's look at the big picture because there's also rumors that the Ukrainians, there's a buildup of troops in Kharkiv and that they're planning to attack Belgorod. There's been a few incursions into Belgorod by Ukrainian units, infiltration units, and a few times they've been destroyed, a few times they've made it through. A few months ago, famously, one infiltration unit was led by this Russian neo-Nazi, I believe, and he was able to get through and just start shooting at civilians and whatnot, causing chaos. But yeah, Belgorod might be a soft target for that reason. Also, there are rumors that the Ukrainians are going to send troops to towards Kupiansk, right? Because Kupiansk is under threat from the Russians. I mean, there's not much activity here in terms of territory lost or gained, but it's under threat. I mean, the Russians are essentially like, you know, 10 kilometers away, 6 miles. It's not very far. So, yeah, so by doing that, the Ukrainians would probably want to push up to this road right here, which is a very important supply line for the Russians. When the Ukrainians liberated all this territory, they kept pushing eastwards. They really wanted to take Swatove and to get to this road, but they weren't able to. The Russians were able to stabilize the line and push them back. But anyway, some analysts are saying they're going to try again. Now, what might Russia do to this in response? They might go for Sumy, which might be a Ukrainian soft target because most of Ukraine's most elite units are by the front lines, right? They're not, um, I mean, these areas are mostly territorial defense, right? Um, so compared to the elite units, they're poorly trained and poorly equipped. Um, and then in Belarus, the Russians also have a significant number of troops. Some say, I've heard 50,000 or more, and then there's a few several, I think more than 50,000 Belarusian troops are also under their command. So if the Ukrainians launch an attack into Belgorod and they're able to threaten or take the territory, the Russians could respond by launching incursions along the northern border, maybe towards Kiev. Who knows? But, the northern border is more of a soft target, right? It's mostly territorial defense here. Some Ukrainian commanders believe that it's all a diversion. The Russians are never going to attack Kiev again, but who knows? Obviously, the Ukrainians would want to attack Belgorod to use it as a bargaining chip, right? But most analysts believe that the main objective is still for the Ukrainians to go southwards in the Zaporizhia Oblast, move southwards, punch through Russian lines with an armored fist, and establish a kind of a salient here. And then by doing that, they would not only be able to threaten the Kursk Bridge, right? Because then it would be a lot closer to them, right? But also, if they were able to take Bryansk, of course, right? And then Mariupol is another potential target. And but the thing is, here's the thing: by doing this, the Ukrainians would cut off the Russian land bridge from Crimea to the Donbass. That would be um, a, a massive win for the Ukrainians, a massive PR win, and it would also be a huge blow to the Russians. It would be devastating for them because it would be essentially cutting off their land bridge, right? Anyways, here's the thing. This area in Zaporizhia, the Russians have built three lines of trenches, and I can show you, I believe, yeah, right here. You can see they have trench lines all along the front. And then, of course, over here, you have the Dnieper River acting as a barrier, right? But here you could see the significant trench networks that they've built. And this diagram kind of shows what they have put together. There's tank traps, dragon's teeth, the concrete obstacles for tanks, uh, trench networks, tunnel networks with pillboxes, and they have minefields. They have ATGM ambush squads, and a lot of their ATGMs have a range of 5 kilometers, like the Cornet, more than 5 kilometers. Tons of artillery along the front. Snipers with armor-piercing rounds, you name it. So it's going to be really hard for the Ukrainians to punch through these defensive lines, right? And here's the thing. The Ukrainians are also building up forces. It seems that they're going. It might be a diversion, but they might also try to cross over from their side of the Dnieper, the side they control, to the Russian mainland, right? To the Russian bank. Um, they might do that. And then another potential target would be in Erhodar, where the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant is, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. So all of Ukraine's amphibious raids have failed till now, but with the amount of troops they're sending to the front, it's either a huge diversion or they're planning to launch a huge amphibious assault all along the Dnieper, right? And here's the thing, with Bakhmut and with Kharkiv and with everything that it seems that the Ukrainians are trying to do, even if they are successful, let's say in Bakhmut, they're able to push the Russians back to where the Russians were before they took Soledar, right? So approximately, actually, let me get rid of this. So let's say they were able to do something like this. Now, something like that. Now, listen, this would be a huge blow to the Russians, be humiliating. It would be a huge press win for the Ukrainians. But if they, even if they are successful doing this, okay, even if they are successful, it's not the end of the Russians, right? And if the Ukrainians sustain significant losses doing this, and if they stretch their forces too thin, they might not have the necessary forces, they might not have the necessary numbers to be able to actually punch through here. Because if they did this, this is where it's most likely, this maneuver would be most likely, this victory would be most likely to win the Ukrainians the war, right? Even then, I mean, it depends how motivated the Russians are, but um, if the Ukrainians spread their forces too thin, there's a famous saying, he who defends everything defends nothing. So that's just some food for thought. Anyways, that's it for today, guys. If you watch till the end, please like and subscribe. If you disagree, agree, comment, share the video if you can, and I will see you in the next one.